The year is the place, church, Ravenwood, Illinois. A town stitched into the flat, endless prairie like a forgotten button on a worn-out coat. Population 1,042 souls. Not a soul more, not a soul less until the vanishing. It's late October. The air bites with the first true chill of autumn. Dry, sharp, smelling of burning leaves and damp earth. Cornfields stretch in every direction, their stalks brittle and golden under a sky the color of tarnished pewter. The town itself clings to Main Street like a child to its mother's hem. A hardware store with a flickering neon sign. A diner where the coffee's always hot and the gossip hotter. A post office with peeling paint. And Bartholomew's Lutheran Church, white clapboard. Steeple pointing skyward like a silent accusation. Beyond the town limits, the land rolls into emptiness. No interstate, no train station. Just Route 17, a two-lane blacktop that cuts through the heart of nowhere, vanishing into horizon haze. Life here moves slow, deliberate, predictable. Men rise before dawn to tend fields or fix tractors. Women hang laundry in backyards, their breath fogging in the morning air. Children walk to school in pairs, boots crunching on frost-laced gravel. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows their business. And everyone knows the unspoken rule. What happens in church stays in church. Outsiders are tolerated, not welcomed. They're ghosts from a distant world. Men in dark suits who appear only when something has already gone terribly, irrevocably wrong. 3 college students arrive in early September. Not locals, not even close. They come from Chicago, bright-eyed, idealistic, full of questions nobody here wants to answer. Daniel Reyes, 21, journalism major, son of a Mexican immigrant janitor, carrying a battered Nikon and a notebook filled with scribbled observations about small-town America. Lena Petrov, 20, political science, sharp-tongued, chain-smoking, daughter of Eastern European refugees, who fled tyranny only to raise a daughter who sees tyranny in every quiet glance. And Marcus Boone, 19, anthropology, quiet, observant, always sketching in a leather-bound journal faces, buildings, the way light falls on the church steeple at dusk. They're here for a semester-long field study. Community cohesion in rural America, a noble cause, a dangerous one. They rent a creaking 2-bedroom house on Elm Street, peeling wallpaper, a furnace that groans like a dying animal, windows that rattle when the wind howls across the plains. They unpack textbooks, record players, posters of Dylan and Lennon. They buy groceries at Henderson's Market, where Mrs. Henderson eyes them over her wire-rimmed glasses and charges them 10 cents extra for city prices. They eat at Lou's Diner, where the coffee tastes like burnt rubber and the waitress Dot calls them honey, but never meets their eyes. They attend Sunday service at Bartholomew's not out of faith, but curiosity. Pastor Eli Whitmore, 62, gaunt, with eyes like flint and hands that tremble slightly when he grips the pulpit, watches them from the choir loft. He doesn't smile. He never smiles. At first, the town tolerates them. Barely. Kids throw acorns at their car. Old men spit tobacco juice near their shoes. But the students persist. Daniel interviews farmers about crop yields. Lena talks to women at the laundromat about gender roles in agrarian society. Marcus walks the fields at sunset, sketching the silhouettes of barns against blood-orange skies. They're earnest, naive. They don't understand the weight of silence here, the way conversations stop when they enter a room, the way doors click shut a little fast. They don't see the glances exchanged over coffee cups, the nods in the hardware store, the way Sheriff Roy Callahan, a broad-shouldered man with a permanent squint and a .38 on his hip, lingers outside their house at night, his cruiser idling like a predator waiting. But something shifts in mid-October. It starts with small things. A slashed tire on Daniel's beat-up Ford Pinto, a rock thrown through their front window one night. No note, no fingerprints, just jagged glass glittering on the hardwood floor. Then the whispers begin. Not about them, about what they're doing. Asking too many questions, mutters Old Man Griggs at the feed store. Digging where they shouldn't, says Deputy Floyd Briggs, spitting sunflower seeds into the gutter. The students feel it, the tightening noose of suspicion. Lena wants to leave. This place is rotten, she hisses one night, pacing the living room, cigarette smoke curling around her like a shroud. But Daniel refuses. We're close to something, he insists, eyes gleaming with journalistic fervor. I can feel it. Marcus says nothing, he just sketches harder. Faces now, not buildings. Faces with hollow eyes and tight lips. Faces that look guilty. The tension thickens like fog. Rain falls for 3 straight days, cold, relentless, turning the dirt roads to mud. The town huddles indoors, curtains stay drawn. Radios play static-laced country songs. And then on the night of October 28th, everything changes. It's a Thursday. The rain has stopped, but the air hangs heavy with damp. The students plan to attend the church's annual harvest supper, a potluck in the fellowship hall, the one night a year when the whole town gathers under one roof. They go, not as outsiders, but as guests. Or so they think. Daniel wears a clean shirt. Lena ditches the cigarettes for the evening. Marcus brings a pie his landlady insisted he take, canned peaches in a store-bought crust. They walk the 3 blocks to the church, boots squelching in puddles, streetlights casting long, wavering shadows. The fellowship hall is warm, bright, filled with the smell of fried chicken, green bean casserole, and cinnamon. Laughter rings out, too loud, too forced. Pastor Whitmore stands by the coffee urn, nodding stiffly as people pass. Sheriff Callahan leans against the wall near the exit, arms crossed, watching, always watching. The students try to mingle. Daniel chats with a farmer about soil erosion. Lena samples a casserole while making small talk with a group of women who fall silent the moment she turns away. Marcus sits alone at a corner table, sketching the room. The bowed heads, the tight smiles, the way Sheriff Callahan's eyes never leave the trio. Then, during the blessing, Pastor Whitmore's voice cracks. And we thank thee, Lord, for this bounty, and for the safety of our community, and for the silence that protects us. Silence that protects us. The words hang in the air, like smoke. No one reacts, but the students exchange glances. Something's wrong, deeply wrong. After the meal, as people begin to leave, Pastor Whitmore approaches them. His breath smells of peppermint and something sour. Whiskey, maybe. You've been curious, he says, voice low, almost gentle. Curiosity is a virtue, but not here, not now. Go home tonight. Pack your things. Leave tomorrow. For your own good. It's not a request. It's a warning. They walk back in silence. The wind has picked up, howling through the bare branches of the elms. Streetlights flicker. Their house feels colder than usual. Daniel checks the locks twice. Lena stares out the window, cigarette forgotten between her fingers. Marcus sits at the kitchen table, flipping through his sketchbook. One page is torn out. Just a jagged edge remains. They don't sleep much that night. The next day, October 29th, they're gone. Not just gone, vanished. No note. No packed bags, no signs of struggle. The Ford Pinto sits in the driveway, keys in the ignition. The front door is unlocked. Inside, half-drunk mugs of coffee sit on the table. Lena's cigarettes lie scattered on the armchair. Marcus's sketchbook is open on the floor, a half-finished drawing of the church steeple staring up at the ceiling. By noon, Mrs. Henderson calls the sheriff. Those college kids, they're not at the market, not answering the door. Sheriff Callahan arrives within minutes. He walks through the house slowly, methodically, checks closets, peers under beds, sniffs the air like a bloodhound. Then he steps outside, lights a cigarette, and stares at the empty street. His face gives nothing away. But his hands tremble, just slightly. He calls it in. 3 missing persons. College students. Last seen last night. No signs of foul play. The report goes to the Illinois State Police. Then, inevitably, to the FBI. 2 days later, agents Harlan Finch and Miriam Cho arrive in church. Finch is 50, grizzled, with a face like weathered oak and eyes that have seen too many lies. Cho is 32, sharp, meticulous, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, her suit immaculate, despite the 10-hour drive from Chicago. They park their unmarked sedan in front of the sheriff's office, a squat brick building with bars on the windows, and step out into the biting wind. The town watches them. From porches, from behind curtains, from the diner window. No one waves, no one smiles. Sheriff Callahan meets them at the door. He shakes Finch's hand firm, dry, practiced. "Appreciate you coming," he says, voice flat. "But I think you're wasting your time. Kids probably got spooked, took off. Happens all the time." Finch doesn't smile. 3 kids, all at once, in a town this small? Unlikely. Callahan shrugs. They were outsiders, didn't belong. Cho steps forward, her voice calm but edged with steel. "We'll need to see the house, interview witnesses, review your notes." Callahan's jaw tightens. "Be my guest." But as they walk to the student's house, Finch notices something. The street is empty. Too empty. No kids playing. No dogs barking. Just silence and the low hum of a distant generator. Inside the house, Cho photographs everything. The coffee mugs, the cigarette butts, the open sketchbook. She finds Marcus's torn page in the trash can, just a corner with a single word scribbled in pencil beneath. Finch questions neighbors. Mrs. Henderson claims she saw nothing. Went to bed early. Bad hip. Old man Griggs says he heard a car engine around midnight, but could have been anyone. Dot from the diner swears the students ate breakfast at Lou's that morning. Pancakes. All 3 of them. But the diner's ledger shows no entry for that day. And Lou himself, when pressed, stammers. Might have been the day before. Everyone's story shifts. Slightly. Consistently. That night, Finch and Cho sit in their motel room, the only one in town, 2 miles out on Route 17. Rain drums on the roof. The heater wheezes. "They're lying," Cho says, spreading photos across the bed. "All of them." Finch nods, staring out the window at the dark fields. "But why? What are they hiding?" Cho flips to a photo of the church. Pastor Whitmore gave them a warning. The night before they disappeared. "Leave for your own good." Finch's eyes narrow. A warning or a threat. Outside, a coyote howls. Long, lonely, haunting. The storm is coming, and Church, Ravenwood, Illinois, is holding its breath. The rain returns the next morning, hard, slanting, turning the world gray and slick. Agent Cho wakes before dawn, her mind racing. She dresses quickly, pulls on her trench coat, and drives back into town while Finch sleeps. She needs to see the church. Alone. St. Bartholomew's looms in the downpour, its white paint streaked with grime, its steeple piercing the low clouds like a bone. The front doors are locked, but the side entrance, the one used for deliveries, is slightly ajar. Cho pushes it open. The smell hits her first. Damp wood, old hymnals, and something else. Something metallic. Blood? No. Rust. Or maybe just the scent of fear, long absorbed into the walls. The sanctuary is empty. Pews gleam under weak light filtering through stained glass, scenes of saints and martyrs, their faces distorted by raindrops on the panes. Cho walks down the center aisle, her heels clicking on the hardwood. At the altar, she stops, kneels, runs a gloved finger along the edge of the communion rail. Dust. Nothing more. But then she sees it. A scuff mark on the floor near the pulpit. Fresh. And beside it, a single button. Navy blue. from a man's dress shirt. She bags it. In the fellowship hall, the harvest supper tables are gone, replaced by folding chairs for Sunday school, but the smell of fried chicken lingers. Chog checks the kitchen. Empty pots. Clean counters. Too clean. She opens the pantry. Canned goods neatly stacked. Flour sacks, and in the corner a mop bucket, still damp. She crouches, sniffs. Beneath the bleach, something organic, something human. Her radio crackles. Finch. Cho. You there? I'm at the church, she says, voice low. Found something. Get back to the motel, now. His tone is urgent. Callahan just filed a report. Says he found the student's car abandoned on Route 17, 20 miles east. Keys in the ignition. No sign of them. Cho's blood runs cold. That's impossible. The car's still in their driveway. A pause. Static. Then Finch. Not anymore. She races back through the rain. The driveway is empty. Just tire tracks in the mud, leading away. Finch is waiting, face grim. Callahan's covering something. That car wasn't moved last night. Someone moved it after we left. True shows him the button. Found this at the church. And the mop bucket. It smells like it was used to clean something up. Finch's eyes harden. We need to talk to Whitmore. Pastor Whitmore isn't at the parsonage. He's at the cemetery. They find him standing before a fresh grave. No headstone yet. Just raw earth covered with a tarp weighted down by stones. Rain soaks his black coat. He doesn't turn as they approach. Whose grave is that, Pastor? Finch asks. Whitmore's voice is a whisper. My wife's died last spring. Cancer. True steps closer. You warned the students to leave. Why? He finally turns. His eyes are red-rimmed, haunted, because they were digging. Asking about the old well, the one behind the church. The well, it's been sealed for 20 years. After an accident, he looks away. Children playing, fell in, never found. Finch exchanges a glance with Cho. And the students knew about this. They found the records. In the church basement, baptismal logs with gaps, years missing. Cho's mind races. What happened the night of the harvest supper? Whitmore shakes his head. I don't know. I went home early. Headache. But his hands are clenched. White-knuckled. Back at the motel, Finch pores over maps. There's no well behind the church. Satellite photos show solid ground. Cho flips through Marcus's sketchbook. But he drew it. Here, look. She points to a page. The church, the steeple, and behind it, a stone circle, half hidden by weeds. And this torn page, beneath. Finch's eyes lock onto hers. Beneath what? That night they returned to the church. Not through the doors. Through the woods behind it. The rain has stopped. Moonlight filters through skeletal branches. They find it quickly. The stone circle overgrown, almost invisible. In the center, a rusted iron cover, bolted shut. Finch pulls out a crowbar from his trunk. Stand back. The bolts scream as they give way. The cover lifts with a groan of corroded metal. Darkness yawns below. Cold air rises, damp, earthy, smelling of decay. Chu shines her flashlight down. The beam cuts through the black and catches on something. White. Bone. Not one skeleton. 3. Lying side by side. Hands bound with rope. Skulls cracked. And around one neck, a silver chain with a tiny camera lens pendant. Daniels. Cho gasps. Finch swears under his breath. They've found them. But how? And who put them there? The next morning, they confront Sheriff Callahan. He's in his office, polishing his service revolver. Doesn't look up. Heard you were at the church last night. We found the bodies, Finch says, voice like ice. In the old well. Callahan finally meets his eyes. Tragic. But accidents happen. Accidents don't bind hands, Cho snaps. Accidents don't crack skulls. Callahan stands slowly. You don't understand this town. Then explain it, Finch demands. Callahan walks to the window, stares out at Main Street. 20 years ago, 3 kids vanished. Just like these 3, never found. We thought it was outsiders, drifters, but it wasn't. He turns, face grim. It was one of us. Who? Cho presses. A man named Silas Griggs. Old man Griggs's son. He had problems. Liked young things. Too much. We caught him with a boy from the next county. Before that, we think he took our kids. And you didn't report it? Finch's voice is dangerously quiet. Callahan's jaw tightens. We handled it. Silas disappeared, drowned in the river. Case closed. But the well was sealed, Cho says. Why? Because the parents, they wanted to forget. We all did. He looks at them, eyes pleading. These new kids, they started asking about the old disappearances, found the baptismal records. Whitmore tried to warn them off, but they wouldn't listen. So someone killed them to keep the secret, Finch asks. Callahan doesn't answer, but his silence screams yes. The investigation explodes. Finch and Cho interview everyone. Old man Griggs breaks down sobbing. My boy wasn't a monster. Dot from the diner admits she lied about the breakfast. Sheriff told us to say they left. Lou confesses he saw Daniel arguing with Deputy Briggs the night of the supper. Said Briggs was following them. Deputy Briggs, Floyd Briggs, a quiet man, always in the background, always watching. They bring him in. He sits in the interrogation room. Just a table, 2 chairs, a flickering bulb. Doesn't ask for a lawyer. Doesn't say a word. Cho lays out the evidence. The button matches his uniform shirt. The tire tracks match his cruiser. The rope used to bind the students. Same type stored in the sheriff's evidence locker, but missing a length. Briggs stares at the wall. Why? Finch asks, voice low. Why kill them? Finally, Briggs speaks. They were gonna expose us. Expose what? The truth. His voice cracks. About the first kids. About Silas. About what really happened. He takes a breath. Silas didn't drown. We killed him. Me, Callahan, Whitmore, and a few others. We found out what he did. Took him to the well. Pushed him in. Sealed it. Cho's blood runs cold. You murdered him. We protected the town, Briggs says, eyes blazing. And these college kids, they found Silas's bones when they dug near the well. They knew they were gonna go to the papers. So you killed them too, Finch. Briggs nods. Same night, after the supper, we lured them to the church. Said we had evidence about the old case. They came. We took care of it. And Callahan knew? Briggs smiles, a thin, bitter thing. He ordered it. The arrest is swift. Sheriff Roy Callahan is taken in cuffs outside his home, still in his bathrobe. Pastor Whitmore tries to flee but is caught at the bus station. A one-way ticket to St. Louis in his pocket. Old man Griggs is questioned but released. No evidence ties him to the killings. The town watches in stunned silence. No cheers. No outrage. Just resignation. As if they expected this. As if they'd been waiting. At the county jail, Briggs signs a full confession. Details everything. The argument with Daniel, the lure to the church, the beating, the well. But something nags at Cho. The rope. She re-examines the crime scene photos. The knots used to bind the students' hands, that intricate, sailor's knots. Not something a farm boy like Briggs would know. And Marcus's sketchbook, she flips through it again. Stops at a drawing of Deputy Briggs. But the hands are wrong. Too delicate. Too precise. Then she sees it. A tiny detail she missed before. In the background of the harvest supper sketch, Pastor Whitmore standing by the coffee urn, and beside him, Dot from the diner. But Dot's hands are holding something, a spool of twine. Cho's breath catches. She pulls Dot's file. Before Lou's diner, she worked on riverboats. learned knots from sailors. And her real name? Dorothy Briggs, Floyd's sister. Cho confronts her at the diner. Dot doesn't deny it. They were gonna ruin everything, she says, voice flat, wiping a counter that's already clean. My brother, he's not a killer. He just did what he was told. I tied the knots, made it look like Silas's work, like history repeating. But why? Cho asks. Dor looks out the window at the empty street. Because in church, we protect our own. Even when they're monsters. Even when we become monsters too. The trial is swift. Callahan, Whitmore, Briggs, and Dot all plead guilty to avoid the death penalty. Life sentences. The town doesn't protest. Life returns to normal. Or as normal as it can be. Finch and Cho prepare to leave. On their last night, Cho drives back to the church one final time. The well is sealed again, concrete this time. Permanent. She stands there, in the cold November wind, and thinks of the 6 souls buried beneath her feet. 3 in, all silenced, all forgotten, except by her, except by the truth. As she turns to leave, she notices something at the base of the steeple. A single sketch, tucked into the foundation, Marcus's work. It shows the town square, every face, every building, and in the center, 3 figures walking away into the horizon. Free. Cho takes it, folds it carefully, puts it in her pocket. Then she gets in her car, drives away, leaving church Ravenwood, Illinois, to its silence, its secrets, its ghosts. The wind howls across the empty fields. The church steeple points to the sky, and somewhere deep beneath the earth, 6 sets of bones lie waiting for justice, for memory, for someone to remember their names. Daniel Reyes, Lena Petrov, Marcus Boone, and the 3 before them, names lost to time but not to the well. The town never speaks of them again, but the truth echoes in the silence, in the creak of floorboards, in the rustle of dry cornstalks, in the cold, dark water far below. Waiting, always waiting. The rain had stopped, but the air still clung to the earth like a wet shroud, cold, heavy, suffocating. It was November 1974, All Saints' Day. In most towns it meant candles in church windows, quiet prayers for the dead. In church, Ravenwood, Illinois, it meant silence, a silence so thick it pressed against the eardrums like cotton soaked in dread. Agent Miriam Cho stood in the sheriff's evidence room, a single bare bulb flickering overhead, casting long, trembling shadows across metal shelves lined with cardboard boxes and rusted firearms. Her fingers hovered over a sealed evidence bag containing the navy blue button she'd found near the pulpit. Beside it lay the spool of twine, coarse hemp, the kind used for baling hay or tying down storm shutters. But the knots were wrong. Too precise, too practiced. Not the clumsy loops of a man who spent his days fixing fence posts, but the tight, interlocking hitches of someone who'd learned rope on river decks or ship rigging. She turned to Finch, who leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his face carved from granite. Briggs didn't tie those knots, she said, voice low but sharp as glass. He couldn't have. Finch exhaled through his nose. Then who did? Cho didn't answer. She walked to the window, peered out at Main Street. Empty. No cars. No children. Even the stray dog that usually nosed through trash bins behind Lou's diner was gone. It was as if the town had drawn inward, pulled its breath, its pulse, its very soul behind locked doors and drawn blinds. We missed something, she said. Something right in front of us. Back at the motel, they spread everything across the bed. Crime scene photos, witness statements, Marcus's sketches, the torn page with the word beneath, Dot's employment records from the Mississippi riverboats in the early Whitmore's sermons transcribed from cassette tapes found in the parsonage. The pieces were there. They just didn't fit the story they'd been told, because the story was a lie. A beautiful, seamless, Town-wide lie. Finch played the tape again. Whitmore's voice, thin and reedy, preaching on October 20th, 1974. Beware the stranger who asks for truth. Truth is a fire. It warms the righteous and burns the wicked. 8 days before the students vanished, Chosu flipped through Marcus's sketchbook once more. Page after page of faces, farmers, shopkeepers, children. But one face appeared more than any other. Dot, always in the background, always watching, always with her hands busy stirring stew, folding napkins, winding thread, and in the harvest supper sketch. The twine. She was there, Cho whispered. Not just as a waitress, as a participant. Finch's eyes narrowed. Sister or not, why would she help kill 3 kids? Because she believed in the myth, Cho said. The myth that church is pure, that its sins stay buried, that outsiders don't get to dig. They brought Dot in again. Not at the sheriff's office this time. At the FBI field office in Peoria. Neutral ground, no hometown loyalties, no whispered warnings through jailhouse walls. She sat in interrogation room B, hands folded neatly on the table, wearing the same floral dress she'd worn the day they first met her, calm, composed, unbroken. Choju placed the sketch on the table. You're in this, Dorothy. Not just serving pie. You're in it. Dot didn't flinch. I'm in every sketch. I work the only diner in town. This one shows you holding twine, Finch said, sliding a photo beside it. The same twine used to bind Daniel Reyes's wrists. A flicker, just a flicker in her eyes, then gone. I handle all kinds of string, she said, for tying boxes, for crafts with the church youth group. Crafts don't use sailors' knots, Cho said. And youth groups don't bury college students in wells. Dot looked down. Her fingers twisted the hem of her sleeve. You think you understand what happened, but you don't. You weren't here in... Then tell us, Finch said, voice softening, just enough to seem like an opening. Tell us what really happened. She took a breath, long, shuddering. Silas Griggs wasn't the monster they made him out to be, she began. He was troubled, yes, but he didn't kill those children. He found them. Cho leaned forward. Found them? Dot nodded. They were playing near the old quarry. Fell in. Silas saw it happen, tried to save them. Couldn't. When he came back to town, covered in mud and blood, hysterical. They thought he'd done it. Callahan, Whitmore, my father, they didn't ask questions. They dragged him to the well that night, said it was justice. Finch's jaw tightened. So they murdered an innocent man and sealed the well with his body on top of the children's, Dot said, voice hollow, to make it look like he'd taken them there, to close the story. Cho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. And the students, they found Silas's bones when they were mapping the church property for Marcus's anthropology project. They dug near the well, just a test pit, found a shoe, a belt buckle, then a skull. They went to Whitmore, thought he'd help, but he panicked. Called Callahan, said the past was rising. And you? Cho asked. What did you do? Dot's eyes filled with tears, but not of remorse, of fury. I kept the peace. I made sure the knots held. I made sure no one screamed. I made sure church stayed whole. You helped kill them, Finch said flatly. I helped save us, she shot back. You think the world would have let us live if the truth got out? That we lynched an innocent man, buried 6 bodies in a well? We'd be pariahs. Tourists would come to gawk. Reporters would camp on our lawns. Kids would be called monsters in school. We'd be ruined. So you chose silence, Cho said. We chose survival, Dot corrected. There's a difference. Back in church, the arrest sent shockwaves, but not the kind Finch and Cho expected. No outrage, no protests, no vigils for the dead students. Instead, a deeper silence settled over the town, like snow muffling sound. Curtains stayed drawn. Porch lights stayed off. Even the church bell, usually rung every Sunday at 10 a.m., remained still. Pastor Whitmore's replacement, a young seminarian from Springfield, tried to hold a memorial service for the students. Only 3 people showed up: an elderly widow, a groundskeeper, and Marcus Boone's landlady, Miss Gable, who wept quietly in the back pew, clutching a peach pie she'd baked just in case he came home. Finch interviewed her afterward. "He was a good boy," she said, voice trembling. "Quiet, always polite, left his shoes by the door, never tracked mud." She paused, then added, almost too softly to hear, "He knew something was wrong. The night before, he asked me if the well behind the church was ever used for anything besides water." Finch's blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him it dried up in the 30s, she said. Lied, like everyone else. Meanwhile, Cho dug deeper into the 1954 disappearances. State archives yielded sparse records. 3 missing children: Billy Hargrove, age 8, Ruthie Callahan, age 7, and Tommy Finch, no relation to Agent Finch, age 6. Last seen riding bikes near the edge of town. No suspects, no leads. Case closed in 1956, due to lack of evidence. But Cho found something else. A buried newspaper clipping from the Ravenwood Gazette, dated November 30th, 1954. "Local man drowns in Mill Creek. Silas Griggs, 22, found floating near old quarry. Authorities cite accidental fall." No mention of the children, no connection, just a quiet death in a quiet town. She drove to the quarry. It was overgrown now. Vines choking the rusted chain-link fence, trees growing through cracked concrete. But at the edge, she found it a depression in the earth, partially collapsed. Not a well, a sinkhole, hidden by brush. She called Finch. "They didn't fall in a quarry," she said, voice tight. "They fell here, near the church, and Silas tried to save them, but the ground gave way. He went in after them, got trapped." Finch arrived within the hour, shovel in hand. They dug for 2 hours, sweat mixing with the damp earth, the November wind biting through their coats. And then bone, small, fragile, a child's femur, then another, and another. 6 sets, not 3. 6. The original 3 children, and Silas Griggs, buried not in the well, but here, in the sinkhole, covered with dirt, leaves, time. The well was a decoy, Cho realized, breathless. They moved Silas's body to the well to frame him, but the kids, they left them here. Finch stared at the shallow grave. So the students didn't just find Silas, they found all of them. And that's why they had to die. Not because they knew about a cover-up, but because they knew the full truth. The town hadn't just killed a guilty man. They'd murdered an innocent one and left 4 children to rot in the dark. The confession from Briggs suddenly felt incomplete. Convenient, a script written to protect the real architects of the lie. Cho confronted Callahan in his cell. He sat on the thin mattress, back against the wall, eyes sunken but defiant. "You let Briggs take the lead," she said. "But you gave the order." He didn't deny it. "Someone had to. Why not just scare them off?" she pressed. "Why kill them?" Callahan looked at her like she was a child, asking why the sky was blue. "Because truth doesn't scare off. It spreads. Like fire, like disease. You think those kids would have walked away? They'd have written books, made documentaries, turned church into a graveyard of curiosity. We couldn't allow that." "And the first children?" Cho asked. "Did you even look for them?" A shadow crossed his face. "We looked. For weeks. Then the sinkhole collapsed further. We sealed it. Said they must have wandered off. Adopted by strangers. Anything but the truth." "You buried them alive in memory," Cho said. "We gave them peace," he corrected. "The town needed peace." That night, Chorching couldn't sleep. She drove back to the student's house on Elm Street. The new tenants, a retired couple from Decatur, had already moved in, but the backyard was untouched, overgrown, forgotten. She walked to the back fence, flashlight in hand, and there, half hidden by dead ivy, she found it. A small metal box, rusted shut, buried beneath a loose floorboard of the porch. Inside, Daniel's notes, pages and pages of interviews, timelines, maps, and one final entry, dated October. We found the sinkhole. Bones. Small. Too many. Whitemore knows. Callahan knows. They're scared. Lena says we should go to the FBI. Marcus says it's too late. They're watching us. I think he's right. If anything happens to us, it's not an accident. It's a sentence. For knowing too much. For being outsiders who dared to care. Beneath it, a Polaroid. The three of them, standing at the edge of the sinkhole. Faces grim, eyes wide with dawning horror. Cho's hands shook as she held it. They hadn't just been killed. They'd been erased. And the town had helped. The next morning, Finch received a call from the state prosecutor. The DA wants to drop charges against Dot Briggs, he said, voice tight with anger. Claims insufficient evidence linking her to the bindings. Cho slammed her fist on the table. We have her confession. Not on tape, not signed. She recanted this morning, said we pressured her. Finch's face darkened. They're closing ranks. But Cho wasn't done. She went to Old Man Griggs, not as an agent, as a person. She found him on his porch, whittling a piece of pine, his hands gnarled but steady. I know your son was innocent, she said, sitting beside him without invitation. He didn't look up. Ain't nothing you can do about it now. I can tell the truth, she said. About him. About the children. About what really happened. He paused. The knife hovered over the wood. Truth won't bring him back. No, she admitted. But it might stop it from happening again. He looked at her then. Really looked. Saw not a federal agent, but a woman carrying the weight of 6 graves. Dot tied the knots, he said quietly. But Callahan held the rope. Whitmore said the prayer. And Briggs, he just did what he was told, like always. Why? Cho asked. Why go that far? Because in church, he said, voice cracking, we don't believe in justice. We believe in quiet. That afternoon, Cho and Finch stood before the sinkhole. Now cordoned off with yellow tape, state forensic teams combing the earth. Reporters had arrived, local at first, then Chicago, then national. Cameras rolled, microphones thrust forward. But Cho didn't speak to them. She walked to the edge, knelt, and placed Marcus's final sketch on the ground, the one of the 3 students walking into the horizon. Then she stood, turned, and faced the town. Church had gathered at the edge of the field, silent, watching, faces unreadable. She didn't accuse, didn't rage. She simply said, their names were Daniel Reyes, Lena Petrov, and Marcus Boone. They came here to understand you. Instead, you made them part of your secret. But secrets don't stay buried. Not forever. Then she walked away. Behind her, the wind stirred the grass. And for the first time in 20 years, someone in church wept openly. The trial began in January. Callahan, Whitmore, and Briggs were charged with triple murder, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Dot Briggs was charged as an accessory. The town didn't rally, didn't protest, didn't send letters of support. They just disappeared. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. They stopped speaking to outsiders, stopped answering doors, stopped attending church. St. Bartholomew's closed its doors in March. The sign was taken down. The steeple, struck by lightning that summer, was never repaired. The student's house on Elm Street stood empty for years, windows boarded, paint peeling, until it finally collapsed in a storm in 19. But the truth remained, etched in court transcripts, in newspaper archives, in the quiet guilt of 1,000 sleepless nights, and in the well, and in the sinkhole. 6 souls in one grave, 3 in another. All silence, all remembered by those who dared to look, by those who refused to lie. As the snow fell on church that winter, soft, relentless, covering everything in white, Agent Miriam Cho stood once more at the edge of the sinkhole, now filled in, marked only by a simple stone, in memory of the lost. May truth be their witness. She placed a single peach pit on the stone, Marcus's favorite. Then she turned and walked back to her car. The road out of town was empty. No one watched her leave. No one waved. But as she passed the old church, she thought she heard something. Faint, distant, like a bell, or a whisper, or 6 voices, finally speaking. Snow fell on church, Ravenwood, Illinois, not in gentle flakes but in thick, suffocating sheets, blanketing the fields, the rooftops, the rusted swing set in the abandoned schoolyard. It was February 1975. The trial had ended a week earlier. Guilty verdicts on all counts, life sentences without parole. No appeals filed, no public statements, just silence. Deeper now, colder, as if the town had exhaled its last breath and refused to inhale again. Agent Miriam Cho should have left. Her case was closed. The files stamped final. The bodies identified, buried in a Chicago cemetery under modest headstones paid for by a journalism foundation honoring Daniel Reyes. Lena's parents, refugees who'd lost everything once before, had taken her ashes back to a village in the Carpathians, where the earth remembers its own. Her mother had whispered, clutching Cho's hand with fingers like bird bones. Marcus's family held a private service in Detroit, attended only by relatives and one anthropology professor, who wept openly over a sketch of a cornfield at dusk. Justice, by legal definition, had been served. But Cho-jun couldn't leave. Not yet, because something still itched beneath the surface of the truth they'd uncovered, like a splinter too deep to dig out with fingers alone. The confessions, the evidence, the graves, it all fit, too neatly, too cleanly, as if the town had rehearsed this ending for decades, waiting for the right moment to perform it for outsiders. She rented a room above Henderson's Market. Mrs. Henderson, now widowed and hollow-eyed, charged her half price for the trouble you've seen. The room smelled of mothballs and old apples, but it had a view of Main Street, and more importantly, of the sheriff's office. Finch had returned to Chicago. "You're chasing ghosts, Miriam," he'd said the night before he left, standing in the motel parking lot, breath fogging in the cold. "The killers are in prison. The victims are at rest. Let it go." But Cho knew some ghosts don't rest. They wait. And church was built on waiting. She began with the archives. Not the official ones, the sanitized, redacted files stored in Springfield, but the town's real memory. Ledgers, church bulletins, school yearbooks, grocery lists scribbled on napkins. She spent days in the basement of the shuttered public library, sorting through mildewed boxes donated by families who no longer cared to remember. And there, in a crate labeled St. Bartholomew's, 1950-1960, a baptismal ledger, not the one the students had seen, the one with gaps, missing pages, ink smudged as if scrubbed clean. This one was different, hand-bound, leather cover cracked with age, pages yellowed but intact, and in it, every child born in church between including Billy Hargrove, Ruthie Callahan, Tommy Finch, all baptized on the same day, June, by Pastor Elias Whitmore, Eli's father. But that wasn't the shock. Beneath their names, in neat cursive, was a notation, sponsored by the fellowship. Cho's pulse quickened. She'd seen that phrase before, in Marcus's notes. He'd circled it, underlined it twice. What fellowship he'd written in the margin. She dug deeper. In the church financial records for 1953-1955, she found regular deposits $500 every quarter from an account listed only as the Fellowship of the Quiet Heart. No address, no officers, just a P.O. box in Peoria. She called the bank. closed in 19... But she didn't stop. She tracked down retired church elders. Most refused to talk. One, bedridden and oxygen-dependent, whispered through a mask. The fellowship wasn't a charity. It was a covenant, sworn by the founding families, to protect the town at all costs. From what? Cho had asked. The old man's eyes had filled with tears. From itself. That night, snow falling harder, Chu drove to the county courthouse. She pulled property records for night and found something that made her blood freeze. The land containing the sinkhole and the well was not owned by the church. It was owned by a trust. The Fellowship of the Quiet Heart Trust, established in beneficiaries, the Callahan, Whitmore, Briggs, and Briggs family, in perpetuity. This wasn't just a cover-up. It was a dynasty of silence, a blood pact passed down through generations to guard the town's darkest secret, not just the murders but the reason for them. But what reason could justify burying children? She went to Ruthie Callahan's grave, small, unadorned, tucked in the far corner of the cemetery, as if even in death she was being hidden. Chu knelt, brushed snow from the headstone, and noticed something. The birth date, March, but the baptismal ledger said she was baptized at age 7. Unusual but not impossible, maybe a late conversion. Then she checked Billy Hargrove's stone. Born, April, baptized, June, age 8. Tommy Finch, born May 22, 1948. Baptized same day, age 6. All baptized the same day. All sponsored by the fellowship. All vanished 3 months later. Cho's mind raced. Why baptize older children together? Unless it wasn't about faith. It was about membership. She drove to the state health department in Springfield, pulled birth certificates, and there it was. Ruthie Callahan's birth certificate listed Roy Callahan as father, but the mother's name was blank. Billy Hargrove's mother? Blank. Tommy Finch's mother? Blank. All born at St. Luke's Hospital in Peoria, all delivered by the same doctor, Dr. Alistair Voss, deceased. Cho's found his records in a dusty archive at the medical school, and in his private journal donated by his estate, she found the truth. June 10, 1954. Met with the fellowship again. They insist the children must be integrated. I warned them genetic risks are high, but they say purity of bloodline is essential, that the town must remain untainted. I agreed to perform the procedures, not for money, for legacy. Procedures. Cho's hands trembled as she turned the page. The children are not orphans. They are products of controlled unions between selected families to preserve strength, to avoid outside blood. They call it the covenant. I call it madness, but I am bound by oath. The children weren't just from church. They were bred by it. Roy Callahan wasn't just Ruthie's father. He was her uncle. The Callahan line had been intermarrying for generations, first cousins, second cousins, trying to purify their blood, to keep the land, the power, the silence within the family. The same with the Whitmores, the Griggses, the Briggs. The fellowship wasn't a charity. It was a eugenics pact, and the 3 children, they were the latest generation. But something went wrong. Cho's found the hospital records. All 3 children showed signs of congenital disorders, heart defects, skeletal deformities, cognitive delays, the result of decades of inbreeding. The town couldn't hide them forever, so they disposed of them, made to look like an accident. And when Silas Briggs, a half-cousin raised outside the inner circle, tried to save them, he became a convenient scapegoat. The students hadn't just stumbled on a murder. They'd uncovered a century of genetic horror, and that's why they had to die. Not just to protect a lie, but to protect a bloodline. Cho returned to church that night, snow swirling around her car like ghosts. She went straight to the jail, not to see Callahan, to see Dot Briggs. Dot was in solitary protective custody after another inmate threatened her. She looked older, frailer, but her eyes were sharp. Chu placed the doctor's journal on the table. Dot read it. Slowly, her face went pale. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, I thought it was just about protecting the town's name." "But you tied the knots," Cho said. "Because I believed in the myth," Dot said, tears streaming, "that we were good people who did one bad thing. But this is evil. Generational evil." "Why didn't anyone stop it?" Cho asked. "Because once you're in," Dot said, "you're never out. They own your name, your land, your soul." Cho left the journal with her. The next morning, Dot recounted her previous testimony. She gave a full, sworn affidavit detailing not just the 1974 murders, but the truth about the fellowship, the breeding program, the sinkhole, the well, the cover-up spanning 50 years. She named names, not just the dead, but the living. Cousins in Peoria, bankers in Springfield, a state senator whose grandmother was a Whitmore. The FBI reopened the case, not as a triple homicide, as a conspiracy against humanity. Federal agents descended on church, not two, dozens. They seized church records, land deeds, family Bibles, private letters. They exhumed the sinkhole again, this time with anthropologists, geneticists, historians. DNA tests confirmed it. The 3 children were all related, not just by town, by blood, closer than siblings. The town didn't just collapse, it unraveled. Families turned on each other. Cousins accused uncles. Wills were contested. Land sold in panic. St. Bartholomew's was seized by the state for evidence. The well was excavated. Silas Griggs's remains removed, given a proper burial beside his father. The students' names were added to a memorial stone in the town square, the first public acknowledgement church had ever made. But the people were gone. Not dead, just gone. Houses emptied overnight. Cars packed with belongings. Families vanished to new towns, new names, new lives. By summer 1975, Church's population had dropped. By 1980, it was a ghost town. The diner closed. The hardware store became a storage unit. The post office shut down. Only the church remained, roof caved in, windows shattered, pews rotting, and the well, sealed with concrete, marked with a federal plaque, site of multiple homicides and human rights violations. Do not disturb. Cho visited one last time in October 1975, exactly 1 year after the students vanished. She walked the empty streets, past boarded windows, past overgrown lawns, past the spot where the Ford Pinto once sat. She stopped at the sinkhole, now a grassy depression, barely visible. She knelt, placed 3 stones, 1 for each student. Then 3 more, for the children of, and 1 final stone for Silas Griggs. Then she stood and spoke their names aloud. Daniel Reyes, Lena Petrov, Marcus Boone, Billy Hargrove, Ruthie Callahan, Tommy Finch, Silas Griggs. The wind carried the names across the fields. No one answered, but the earth remembered. She drove out of town as the sun set, painting the sky in blood orange and violet. In her rearview mirror, Church, Ravenwood, Illinois, shrank into the horizon. Just a cluster of broken roofs, a crooked steeple, and the endless, indifferent prairie. She never returned, but she kept Marcus's final sketch, the one of the 3 students walking into the horizon. And every year on October 29th she placed a peach on their graves, not as an agent, but as a witness, because in the end, that's all truth needs. Someone to see it, someone to say it, someone to remember. Years later, in 1992, a developer tried to buy the land for a solar farm. He found the federal plaque, read the files, walked away. The land remains untouched. Wildflowers grow where the sinkhole was. Deer graze near the well. And on quiet nights when the wind blows just right, locals in the next county swear they hear voices. Not screaming, not crying, just talking. as if 6 souls, finally free, are telling their story to anyone who dares to listen. The town of Church is gone, but the silence is still there, waiting, watching, warning, because some truths are too heavy for one town to carry, and some graves never stay closed.